Welcome to Game and Grains, the whiskey gaming channel. I'm your player one, Richard. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the limited released Sonora from the folks over at Garrison Brothers Distilling. So grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. Limited releases are some of my favorites to review because more often than not, there's something extraordinary about those bottles beyond the liquid that's inside. And the same could be said about Garrison Brothers Sonora. Sonora takes its name from the Caverns of Sonora, a cavern series located under the Texas limestone. Sonora the whiskey is meant to pay homage to the women of Garrison Brothers Distilling. Donis Todd, master distiller, worked alongside another distiller, Samantha Olvera, to create this straight bourbon whiskey that was aged in rye barrels. Now, why did I mention Olvera? Well, she has been working at Garrison Brothers for 7 years and is the first female Latina to work in craft Texas whiskey. Now, before we can give ourselves a pour, you know we have to unpack the bottle. And there's a lot to unpack here. As I mentioned before, this is Garrison Brothers straight bourbon whiskey that was finished in rye barrels. Before entering the rye barrels, they used their 4-year straight bourbon whiskey. They then transferred it into their rye barrels where it was finished for 3 years. The mash bill is 74% corn, 15% wheat, and 12% malted barley. Now, if you did your math, then you would know that it has an age statement of 7 years, 4 years of the bourbon plus the 3 years that it was finished in those rye barrels. Now, this was a limited released whiskey, and at the time it was at $160. Now, I believe they had some of their bottles available online. You might be able to still find them through secondary markets or what have you, but around $160 is how much that should cost. And of course, it was distilled, aged, and bottled at Garrison Brothers Distilling. All right, I just dropped a whole bunch of information on you. You're here to see the review, so let's get into it. Now, with this being a wheated whiskey, I am expecting to get a lot of sweeter notes to it. Typically, when I have a wheat whiskey, I get what I describe as a sweet grass. Hopefully we'll get some of those caramel vanilla notes that you would traditionally get with a wheat whiskey. I would imagine with it being finished in a rye barrel, we will probably get some of that rye spice. But since that's not a part of the original mash bill, I don't know that it would necessarily be as prominent as if it were. So first thing we're going to do is get in on the nose. So the first thing that I pick up is, like I do with many of the wheat whiskeys I've had, is that what I call sweet grass notes. Immediately behind that is going to be vanilla and caramel, so similar notes that you would get from a bourbon. There's a slight citrusy zest note to it. A little bit of that oak influence that you would expect from the Texas heat. It's going to give a lot of those oaky notes because of the evaporation. And then a slight spice, not anything overly bearing. It's present, definitely influential or influenced by the rye barrels. So we're going to get in on the taste. Cheers. Okay, so the first thing that I get is honey. That's then followed by a little bit of spice there, and then a lot of that wood influence. So oaky notes from the barrel. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before. I believe, let me check. Yes. That the proof point is 108. So not anything that's going to be super in your face as far as proof goes. Nice and subtle. Let me get in on the taste again. So I get a slight like red fruit or a dried fruit, perhaps a raisin, that sweet note. And then as that starts to taper off, I get some of that wood influence that is there. I do have tasting notes from the website just to kind of help me pick out some of the other stuff. It says on the palate I should be getting black pepper, cinnamon, citrus zest, almond tea, and wildflower honey. I definitely get the honey. There is some of those rye spice or spice notes that I would typically get out of a rye mash bill. I could probably get some of that. Well, that's on the nose. So that honey is not as strong. Honestly, what I get a lot of from this is that wood influence. Like I said, there is honey there. You are getting more of the spice than what I thought that I would. But overall, it's pretty good. The finish, you are left with a slight sweetness, but I am getting some of that oakiness from the barrel. All right, one more just because I have a little bit more in the glass. See if I can pick up anything else on the nose. Just sweetness, that slight sweetgrass nose that I mentioned before, along with just a little bit of rye spice. All right, so short finish, you get a little bit of sweetness that then quickly just kind of tapers off, leads into more of that oakiness from it. Now, this is a really cool bottle. It was a sample that was sent to me by my good friend, the Whiskey Shaman. As I mentioned before, this is a limited bottle. I believe it was sold only at the distillery. I could be wrong. I think they also offered some of it on their website. I think they're sold out through Garrison Brothers specifically, but there might be some secondary places, some liquor stores or online stores you could probably purchase from. Really cool, just all around story behind the bottle. If you get a chance to actually look at the bottle, it has this really cool maroon wax on it. I believe there's some other symbols and stuff like that too that are meant to pay homage to the women of Garrison Brothers as well. So thank you, Whiskey Shaman, for sending me the sample. I didn't really mention that a lot in the beginning. Great all-around cool whiskey, great all-around cool story behind it. So, all right. Thank you, as always, for sticking until the end. Please make sure that you hit the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Tell friends, tell family if you are interested in this kind of content, your fellow whiskey enthusiast. In the in the comments below, let me know. Do you have a favorite whiskey from Texas that maybe you have tried? Are you chasing any Texas whiskey? What are you looking for? All right, guys, as always, thank you for sticking until the end. I'm your favorite player one, Richard. Have a good one.